Welcome, everyone. We're your hosts. I am Ray.
And I'm Weicho. And today we're going to be talking about JRPGs.
It's hot outside. This is the Get in the Shade podcast. Let's go.
Let's go.
You gotta play it up. Come on, you gotta play it up.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta play it up. It's just,
right.
I don't know. It's kind of cringy, but I like it. It was a good
Hell yeah. It was just like, oh, we're doing it.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to do that again, but...
No, we're not doing it again. That's the intro. This is in the episode. We're doing it.
Okay. Let's start off, right? Octopath Traveler just released. JRPGs. They're the best. Or one of the best. Let's start with the story. Yeah?
I would say that JRPGs are the games that I've played the most. Especially time. I've put the most time into JRPGs.
I'd have to agree, because, I mean, you know...
Just by the nature of them, they're time sinks.
Yeah, they're time sinks. You're putting in at minimum, 30, 40 hours?
Yeah,
that's
20.
Just if you're,
I would say 20. Like,
if you're strictly going for the story. Yeah, if you're speed running, quote unquote, not actual speed running, but you're trying to finish them up, if you go
like
fast, 20 hours. Yeah. But so Octopath Traveler just released. Let's use that as a gateway to talk about JRPGs, just because it's the most recent one, and
it's fresh.
So it's fresh. So people are on the fence about the 8 individual stories not leading to an overarching story, which apparently there is a final dungeon that kind of gets all the threads into one, where there is some semblance of an ending where all 8 stories intertwine. But does stuff like that, does that ruin the game for you? Does this make it more or less interesting? And how does it compare to other games that have tried similar takes, where it's just a bunch of individual stories that do not combine to a story or do combine to a story?
I'm fine with it because your protagonist isn't faceless. You have to choose somebody whose story you're going to play. So if you choose the warrior or the merchant or the thief, that's who you are playing, and that's their story. So it's not so bad. I would feel bad if you were faceless. It's just like, name your character. Your character doesn't have a voice. Your character doesn't have a name. Your character doesn't have anything. And you get to see the story. You get to play the story. Then it feels like you have no money on the table. At like a gambling reference, you're just there. Like, I'm watching all this happen. But with the 8 individual stories, those are 8 individual characters with like you said, the last dungeon that ties them all together. But even if it didn't, that'd be fine, because to me, it's 8 individual stories in one game.
Mm-hmm.
It's still one game. You know what I mean? Like, it's 8 stories that are all kind of loosely connected. But if the game as a whole is good, I don't care how many stories in it. It can have 1 story, it can have 4 stories, it can have 8 stories. Buildings. Yeah,
so it wouldn't matter to you if it's if there's a game, just focuses on the protag and his story, and there's the game like Octopath where it's 8 stories, which are obviously not as fleshed out as a single protagonist kind of game, where they can focus all those resources to one character. That doesn't kill the game for you, right? Like, that's fine if they're not as fleshed out as a game like that.
No, because there's plenty of games in the same genre but different franchises where your character literally doesn't have a voice. Your character didn't talk. I'm talking about Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
Your character's literally faceless name guy. Like, it's supposed to be you. Like, you're supposed to be playing you. It's the ultimate what people want in an RPG, or like depends on who you speak to. Some people want the faceless person that they can mold and be, and other people want to see an already fleshed out story of a character. So it kind of really depends on what kind of RPG you're into. Do you want to pretend that you're the character, or do you want to see another character, or do you want to see a fleshed out character evolve? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. So, knowing that you have played and passed Final Fantasy VI recently, it has kind of a similar take in like the way where each character has his own kind of story, right?
Goal. Yeah.
So, like, going through that, it's different from a lot of other Final Fantasies. Did that make you enjoy the game more, or was it like, was it something that you didn't appreciate, or how did you feel about that?
Certain characters' stories are better than others. Like, Setzer's story is pretty good. Terra's story is obviously really good. Celeste story is obviously really good. Locke story is obviously really good. But like Umaru's story, he's a Yeti. That's kind of his story. There's a what's the name of the character? The mimic guy who just kind of like mimics whatever somebody does. Those don't really have stories. They're just extra characters. The same with Mog, where he's just kind of like, I was at the beginning of the game and you can pick me up, and I'm Mog. And I'm just like, okay.
Did he feel like one of those characters that was just added, kind of like Quina from FF9 or like Kate Sith from FF7?
No, because I feel that those characters had a specific job. They were like the comic relief. And Mog isn't really a comic relief. They're just like, hey, he's a Moogle. We like Moogles. Put him in the game. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it makes me not feel attached to the characters much, as opposed to like Edward and Edgar. Is it Edward?
Yeah, Edward. The guy from the desert?
Yeah, Edward and Edgar and Cyan. Cyan's story is really good. And like all these other characters that have like defined stories that are a part of the world and that you help build and, spoiler, destroy, and have to pick up the pieces again. But that game has something that Octopath doesn't. It does have an overarching theme story. Like the Espers, you have to, Kefka's fucking crazy. The emperor of that place is a dickhead. Like, that has an overarching story, and you play as characters in that world. And this is more like, here's a world, and here's 8 characters, and they're loosely tied together.
Yeah, so there was a lot of rumors like before the game release where there wasn't any interaction between the party members and whatnot, but it did end up that there is a lot of banter in the game between the characters depending on who's in your party. That's so that's nice to.
Well, like also don't the characters like have like friendship levels or whatever?
No, there's no friendship levels. Like the most interaction you get between them is the banter when you're going through their story, like their specific chapters. Depending on who you have in your party at a specific time during their chapter, they have some dialogue to some input towards your story and what you're doing.
Oh, okay, pretty cool.
Yeah, it's nothing to the level of Tales, like the Tales of where you get banter just by roaming around and they start talking and hitting you up and whatnot. Yeah. It's not like that, but there is moments and they're nice. Well, also, they're like heart to hearts.
I don't really know a lot about Octopath because I haven't played it, and you have. Is that story like we have to save the world, or is that just like not so much super drastic?
Okay, so I don't want to get too specific, but one of the stories are very self-contained in that they're all so different. I'll be like, one of the characters is kind of like a save the world kind of story, but that's one of the 8 where someone else's story is more like just trying to be like a good old goody two shoe. Someone else just trying to explore the world. It's a revenge story, and it's a whole bunch of different generic storylines. Yeah.
Okay, I get that.
And it's nice, where it's just not all about trying to save the world. It's just like it's an adventure. It's just to have fun.
Yeah, that makes sense. Talking about like story in RPGs, like how do you feel about games like Pokemon or what am I thinking of? Other RPGs that don't have this grand scale, because Pokemon really doesn't have that.
Yeah,
and a lot of people like to think of Pokemon as its own genre of RPG, but it's really not. It is a turn-based RPG. It's your numbers versus their numbers, and your type versus their type. That's what it is.
Yeah,
just I feel like choosable characters.
I feel like this goes for a lot of other people, where I don't play Pokemon for the story. Like the story has never caught my attention to be like, whoa, like I really want to know what happens next. Like what's next to this? Like it doesn't hook me like that. It's just I don't know. I play it for the nostalgia. I play it for the Pokemon. I love the designs and just passing the game. It's an adventure and it's fun.
Yeah, I will say that Gen 7 Sun and Moon took a big step as far as like narrative.
No, I agree.
Like like it gave me characters that I actually care about, and that's something that Pokemon never really did outside of anime, until like Gen 5 with the dude who leads that team, where he doesn't like Pokemon fighting or whatever.
N, I think.
Yeah, N, exactly.
Yeah,
where he was the first character in in the Pokemon game where I was like, damn, like this guy is serious. Like he's actually sticking to his guns, because it's like Gen 1 Rocket, Gen 2 Rocket, Gen 3 Aqua. Again,
Aqua and Magma.
Yeah, that one was more like a save the world, end the world kind of plot. Sort of. Like the teams are like, we want to raise Groudon, and they raise Groudon or Kyogre, and they're like, oh we fucked up, and it's just like, you have to fix it. I don't remember a lot about Gen 4, because that's probably the game that I've played the least.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat there.
5 was good. Like the story was actually had meaning. 6 was just not a great game for the story.
For the story, yeah. For the story, I agree.
Like that was like super milquetoast. Like
shades of Gen
good.
3, where it's just save the world,
and it was super easy. Like God, that game was easy. And then Gen 7, it was actually like the Kahunas are good characters. Like they're really strong, good characters. Because like, when do you remember a gym leader being like, oh man, that character's so cool, outside of Gen 1?
Yeah, pretty much. And it's just, I can relate, because Gen 7, they had a lot of good designs, especially for the trainers, because you go back to the other ones, it's just, a lot of things they felt generic.
Yeah, well, I mean, Gen 1 can be forgiven because it's old.
Yeah. But like once you got to like Gen 4, Gen 5, like I honestly, I can't recall any of the gym leaders. I can't recall most of the people from the game, except like Cynthia and like the most prolific characters.
Yeah,
but
the champions in the Elite Four is the ones that you tend to remember, because those are the best fights. But for Gen 7, like I remember most of the Kahunas. I remember the trial fights. Even if they weren't difficult, some trials more difficult than others, but there was moments in those games where you're just like, wow, like that character is actually kind of cool. Like the Kahunas are cool, the Pokemon designs are cool, and I don't want to talk about older Pokemon designs because people just get butthurt.
Yeah, we should probably save that for something else. Let's get back on track. We went on the Pokemon tangent there.
Well, I think going back to the story of an RPG, that really depends, at least to me, what you're looking for in an RPG. Or a JRPG specifically. Because JRPGs very rarely have a faceless model. Like, they have areas in which your character can go via whatever it is you have to do in the game, your choices or whatever, but we'll talk about that later. But it's very much like, this is the character, this is the story. This is your character, this is your story. This is the character, this is your story. I don't feel like there's a lot of faceless stories in JRPGs. At least none that come to mind. The one that comes to mind for me right now is Shin Megami Tensei 4 for the 3DS.
Yeah.
That one's just like, that's a blank slate, that's whoever you want to be.
And that's something, like, I like that you bring that up, because that's what I've always liked about JRPGs. Kind of like when you read a book, there's a character that's set, like the story is set. Yeah, you're just there to, witness it.
Yeah, or you're there to be...
You're there to witness your story, and that's what I've always liked about JRPGs, because I do like my occasional Bethesda game or whatever where you're a faceless protag and you make your choices and whatnot.
And you mold yourself to the world around you. Yeah.
But sometimes you want to see like stuff through other people's points of view and stuff like that. So that's what I've always liked about JRPGs, where I'm just here to enjoy the ride. I'm not here to forge my own road. I just want to travel.
See the story. Yeah, it's like watching a movie, except it's way longer.
Yeah. So, do we have anything left that we want to talk about when it comes to stories, or do you want to move on to graphics in JRPGs?
Let's move on to graphics, because I have a very milquetoast answer.
Okay.
So, I don't care what the RPG looks like as long as it's fun.
So, to once again bring up Octopath, because it's fresh, it uses a combination of pixel graphics and 3D graphics, and the game's they charge $60. Some people don't like that because they think the game looks like trash. But are pixel games outdated? And do we need AAA graphics to have a good game, a good story? Like, if it's not AAA graphics, is it not worth playing? Because that's how some people feel. And like, personally, I disagree. Like, how would you feel when it comes to this topic?
No, like, don't get me wrong. I like games that are pretty, but games that are pretty don't necessarily make games good. Mm-hmm. Final Fantasy 13 was pretty. That game is still pretty, and it's old now. Like, when did 13 come out? 2011? 2010?
That's a good question.
It was like 2010.
I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, it's like 2010, 11, and that game looks gorgeous, and it still does. That game looks A+, 10 out of 10. That is not a good game.
All right,
hot
so
take. That's a hot take. I don't like Final Fantasy 13.
Came out in December 17th of 2009.
Okay, so like it came out the year that I graduated high school. I'm old. So it's just that game is 9 years old. It's about to be 10 years old, and that does not look like a 10-year-old game. That game looks fucking gorgeous.
Yeah, to put it into perspective, I think New Vegas came out in 09, right?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And in comparison, Final Fantasy 13 looks like a gorgeous painting, and Fallout New Vegas looks like a brown turd. And I love Fallout New Vegas. One of my favorite games of all time, maybe my favorite game on the 360. But mother curse word, Final Fantasy 13 is not a good game. That game is not great. But it's pretty.
I mean, I like the game. I don't think it's the best, but I think it's a decent game.
Like, again, I'm not saying the game is bad, and I'm not saying the game is... Like I said, I'm not saying the game is bad. I just don't like it.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to tell me it was a bad Final Fantasy game, I would agree with you.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, that is what I'm getting at. It's okay. A good game. It is not a good Final Fantasy game. Its biggest problem comes from the fact that Final Fantasy is attached to it. If it had just been a no-name game, if it had just been like Lightning's Quest or whatever the frick, it would have been... I'm trying to cuss less because I cuss a lot.
I'll go for
it would have been like that, the best game of the year. It's so good. There's a couple of problems in it, but it's good. Final Fantasy attached to it is just like, this game's trash.
You put that tag and you expect a certain amount of quality, and it did not deliver it.
Well, like, going back to the pixel graphics, some of my favorite, well, because I'm old, some of my favorite games are pixel graphic. Final Fantasy 6, Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, another hot take. I love that game. Music's good, the art's good, the game ain't great. But I love it. Fucking not an RPG, but any game on the Super Nintendo. Mega Man X, Donkey Kong Country, like, these games look good. They're old, and if you made a game that looked like that today, people would laugh at you and call you dumb. But those games still hold up. Donkey Kong Country 1 is still fun to play. Like, Mystic Quest is still fun to play to me. Like, so graphics isn't so much... It's important, but it shouldn't be the main focus of the game. It's like, this game's really pretty, but it's like, but is the game good? It's really pretty. It's just like...
yeah, and it's just like, pixel graphics age well. That's a fact.
It's the same thing. Same thing with cell shading, like Borderlands and stuff. Mm-hmm. Play Borderlands 1; it still looks pretty good. Borderlands 2 looks amazing, still, and that game's pretty old.
Yeah. So like, and there's been like a resurgence of pixel graphics, like in the last couple of years. Like, I know Binding of Isaac went the pixel way in like their remake or whatever. Shovel Knight, Enter the Gungeon.
Yeah, all these games.
Dead Cells.
Yeah, they look older, but it's just. They look good.
I have a question for you. Like 10 years from now, if like you would go back and play FF6 or the games prior to 6, right? Yeah. But would you go back and play FF13, or would you go back and play like FF8? Like, playing FF8 is kind of a chore because that game looks horrible. I'm playing
FF8 now. Like, yeah. I'm replaying the game because I didn't play it as a kid, and I don't have the nostalgia glasses for it. And I played it when it came out. It came out in what, in 98, 99?
Yeah.
That's like 98 or 99. So I was like 9. I was like 8 or 9, and I was, probably the same with a lot of people. They look like real people. Oh my god! Like they're real people. They're tall. They walk. They have hands. Apparently, that's all the person was to me back in the day. But I loaded up the game on Steam, and it looks way better on Steam than it did on the original PlayStation. I was like, this game looks like poopy duty. Oh my god! Like this, it looked terrible. It was terrible.
Yeah, the game came out in '99, and they look like balloon animals. Yeah, they look horrible.
Well, even like Final Fantasy VII, going backwards. Final Fantasy VII to me looks better than 8 because those characters look cartoony, like your avatar when you run. You look like a little balloon guy, and I'm just like, okay, like he doesn't have a mouth, he has 2 eyes and a nose and hair, and he's a fucking balloon aminal. English is hard. Yeah. He's running, like a balloon animal, and when you get in a fight, he looks more like a person. And I'm just like, oh, this is really cool. I'm playing the game, RPG, let's go. And then when it immediately switched to 8, where they're like, we're going to try to make him look the same in battle as out of battle, you start to nitpick, where you're just like, dude, that guy does not look good. Not to mention that game has a crap ton of plot holes, and I don't like Squall. He's a dick.
Yeah,
I'm still really early in the game, and also have a problem with the Steam port with the button layouts. You have to download a mod in order to give you proper button prompts on screen, because you get like button 1, button 2, button 3, button 4, button 5, button 6. So you have to sit there and be like, what do button do?
But like to rewind a bit. So FF7 and FF8, they look bad. They like you can put on your nostalgia glasses and tell me that no, they look decent, but they look bad.
Yeah, they don't look.
But that's not that hasn't stopped us from going back and replaying them because it's a good game. And that just it comes back to the 8's debatable, but 7, at least 7.
Yeah, 7's good. 8 didn't age so well. They try to go really out of the box with the drawing and the level.
No, 7 didn't age well either.
But at least it's basic RPG though. Like they didn't try to go out like every enemy in the game scales with you, and it's like that makes me not want to get in any fights.
But the point I'm trying to make is that even today, if someone has not played FF7 before, they could look at it and say, this game looks like garbage. But I'm pretty sure once they would start playing it, they'd be like, this game is fun. Like this is something I could play to the end.
It kicks in. Like
where graphics aren't everything.
No, where you can actually sit there and be like, okay, like this game makes sense. The leveling makes sense. It scales properly. And we'll talk about that in later segments, but the graphics shouldn't be the forefront of the game unless the game is going to be less game. Current examples is like Detroit Become Human.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost a point and click adventure, but it looks really good. It is super pretty, super duper pretty. That game looks amazing, but it's kind of just like something's happening. Quarter circle forward. All right, now mash your X button.
Throwing a Hadouken or something?
Now yeah, exactly. It's like now hold R1 and L1, and you're just like, I'm not really playing a game. It's a segment of quick time events and it's a movie with characters.
So is it kind of like Heavy Rain? Have you ever played?
Yeah, they're made by
Rain?
The same people.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Then.
Yeah, and like Heavy Rain was beautiful for the day it came out in. Like it was amazing looking, but it wasn't really a game. It's a story that you get to interact with. Yeah, it's an interactive story.
Yeah, like to people who are looking for those kinds of games, like it's fun. Like they definitely have a.
They're
going
for
a niche.
If you have, I believe it's a PS4. If you have a PS4, and you have somebody in your life that doesn't really play games, and you want them to get into them, that's a really good starter. But, hey, watch me play this, and then they'll like slowly get into, and then Telltale and all kinds of other games. Really cool.
Yeah.
But I do believe that graphics become over emphasized, and sometimes gameplay really suffers for it. Where back in the day we were playing Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and those games, I mean, the difference between 5 and 6 really isn't that big if you go back and look at it now, and it still looks good. The game looks good. You know what you're looking at. And the game's fun. That's what's important. The gameplay, not so much the graphics.
Yeah, graphics should definitely be included in your how much you're gonna enjoy the game, but it shouldn't be the end all be all. Like it's definitely, you should consider it, but it should not detract you from having trying out the game and seeing if it's fun for you or what have you.
It shouldn't be the biggest piece of the pie chart.
So coming back to the original question, you've seen the way like Octopath Traveler looks and stuff. Like, would you say it's okay to charge like $60 for something that looks like that? Because personally, I think it looks beautiful, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, man. I think that it's worth the $60. People worked on the game. People built this game from the ground up, and it's good. It's fun to play. Again, it looks good. You know what you're looking at. As long as it doesn't look ineligible, you're fine.
Yeah. And you know what? To further expand on this, like the Tales games, they've been using the same engines and graphics for ever now. Like all the games have pretty much looked the same for the most part, and people keep buying them because it's fun, and they have really fun combat too. And I guess I can segue into combat, or do you want to talk about combat systems now?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, so combat systems, like obviously that's a big part of the game. Like turn-based, is turn-based still in? Is it outdated? Do you have more fun with turn-based JRPGs as opposed to like more fluid action-based, such as Tales, Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy 15?
I think that at the highest levels of those games, it really matters what you do. Like inputs are important, and I know that sounds dumb to say out loud, but in a turn-based RPG, when you're in the grind, when you are trying to level, it eventually just turns into like mashing a button. You're just like, okay, like pushing through the encounters.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, in an action game like Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy 15, or the Tales games, it kind of feels the same way. You're like, oh, I'm in a fight. All right. Okay, I'm done. I will say on the more difficult ends of those spectrums, the more difficult turn-based and the more difficult action games, I feel that turn-based games have a little bit more leniency, just for the fact that they are like a hard turn-based, not so much an ATB gauge.
Yeah.
But a hard turn-based game can be like, okay, it's my turn. I have to dictate an action. What am I going to do? And you can think about it and wait until you actually make your mind up. Whereas
that also depends, right? Whether you're like the turn-based system is a wait mode or ATB.
Yeah, even if it is ATB, you still have like a short time to be there, sit there and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Or okay, I'm going to do this. And in an action game, if you get in over your head, you have to be more mechanically sound. And that's not something you really hear outside of games like MOBAs, RTS, fighting games, where your mechanics matter. Where you're like, I had to dodge roll, and then I had to wall jump, and then I had to do air combo into a ground combo into a knock up, and I'm just like, okay, like that's cool, and it feels good when you're at that level, where you're sitting there and you're thinking about everything that you're doing, and if your party has the correct equipment, the correct spell slots, if that's a thing. Losing, like, it doesn't really happen in turn-based games as much to me, but losing your hand, like losing your buttons, where you're just like, oh man, I was mashing the wrong button the whole time. Where you're sitting there, you're trying to do something and you just miss the button.
And it just completely throws you off.
Yeah, it happens in stuff like Pokemon too, where you accidentally use the wrong move and you knock out the Pokemon that you're trying to catch, and then you just sad.
And also, like to come back a bit, so the whole turn-based system, like we've seen JRPGs kind of derive away from it, kind of like, you know, like you have FF15. Kingdom Hearts has, you know, driven away from it for a while. But you can see more studios going away from turn-based, excuse me, as opposed to going towards it or trying to like revisit the turn-based combat system. And like Octopath came back and it did turn-based and it did it pretty well. It's kind of like Bravely Default. You know, like Bravely Default was a turn-based game, but they innovated on it a bit and it made it really fun. Would you agree?
Yeah. I love Bravely Default. It's a great game. I agree that more companies are steering away from turn-based games just because turn-based games
Whoa.
Freudian slip that feels bad. But
yeah, anyways.
But that format, everybody did it. It was the hot take on the NES, Super Nintendo, that those were the games that you did. Like, if you wanted to do an RPG, it had to be turn-based. Because that was the best way to tell a story and to be quote-unquote tactical, where your movements mattered. A game that we're not bringing up, that we haven't brought up, is Dragon Quest or Dragon Warrior. I constantly forget because they're two different names. But
yeah, they went from Warrior to Quest.
Yeah, Dragon Quest. Those games at the start were super duper basic. It's just like you have an attack, you have a magic, you have like 6 or 7 combat spells, and you have like 3 heal spells. That's it. That's all you got. You have one character. Like, that was Dragon Quest 1, because I've beaten 1, 2, and 3. And those games are very much a vehicle for the story. It was like, we want to tell a story, but we don't want to make it super technical. We want you to actually care, actually like level, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. With improvements upon systems and graphics, games like Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy 13, Final Fantasy 15, Final Fantasy 6 had an ATB gauge, Final Fantasy 5 had it. These games that were very much grand epic stories, but they were still there's so many iterations of the turn-based system and of the action system that you kind of need to evolve, because it will get boring. Like, I don't understand how Pokemon keeps doing it, but then again, you think about Pokemon, like, they added Mega Evolutions, they added Z moves, they've been adding, they added hold items.
They've added some gimmicks.
Yeah, gimmicks, but they're still makes the turn-based system more fun, because it adds that little, that customization.
It adds like an extra layer.
Yeah, something that you can do outside of just the basic combat system. Kingdom Hearts, I don't know about Final Fantasy 15, because again, I haven't played it. But Kingdom Hearts, there's a lot of that. It's like, you can swing your Keyblade, you can add extra hits, you can dodge roll, and you can block. And you can cast spells. And that's kind of all you can do. But in the realm of a 3D world, you get infinite possibilities, quote unquote. It's like, I'm going to roll, then I'm going to jump, but after I jump, I'm going to hold left, so I fly to the left to land to this guy, and then I'm going to hit him, and then like so on and so forth. So the combat becomes more fluid, and it makes more sense in that way, but again, it's very fast. Like, a lot of those games, a lot of action games in general, stuff like Devil May Cry and stuff like that, those games give
your hack and slashes.
Yeah, those games give you a lot of
variety. Like, there's a lot of moves.
a lot of variety, a lot of mobility, a lot of chances to, I'm thinking of the word and I can't think of it, but to like customize what you're gonna do. Where it's just like, oh, and this time I'm not going to do it like this, or this time I'm going to do it like this.
Where every fight can be different, because there's just that many options available to you.
Yeah. And turn-based games don't really have that. Like, once you find out an enemy's weakness, or once you're faster than a certain enemy, once you do more damage to a certain enemy, it's literally just like, okay, this action, this action, I win. This action, I win. This action, I win. You know what I mean? Just like,
yeah, it becomes trivial. Like, it's just like
you're going through the motions.
I forgot what game it was, but once you got to like a certain point, like it would just be you could just auto battle and it would just defeat the monsters instantly, so you wouldn't have to deal with them.
Earthbound did that. Earthbound did that. Lunar did that, where the auto battle was just literally it used all your strongest abilities, or you could preset abilities.
Mm-hmm. And then another one of the other combat systems that we haven't brought up was like so SRPGs or SJRPGs. We have games like Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy Tactics, and Disgaea. Like we haven't brought up that combat, and I feel like that combat's really good too. Like, how do you feel about that combat?
Yeah, it adds another layer of, like you said, like another complicated layer, because you no longer have to only worry about what you're going to do, but where you are. And I know, again, it sounds dumb when you say it that way, but you have to sit there and think. It's like, I'm going to move here, but if I move here, this guy can hit me. And I have to think about like, oh, well, I'm on the high ground and they're on the low ground, or vice versa. Or characters that don't care about that kind of stuff, or characters that have equipment that lets them teleport, or, what weapon is that guy using, or, it adds another layer of depth.
Complexity of strategy, yeah, because positioning, especially in those type of games, is a huge deal. I mean, you got like Final Fantasy IV, where you got like front rows and back rows, and like that kind of positioning. It's
all Final Fantasies had that since the first one.
The front row, back row.
Mm-hmm.
When did they stop doing that? Was it 7? Did 6 have front rows and back rows?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess they stopped at 7.
I don't know about 7, or I know 7 didn't have it, 8 didn't have it, 9 didn't have it, 10 didn't have it.
Yeah.
12 didn't have.
No, 12 was something else. 12 was something else.
12 was amazing.
12 was good.
13 didn't have rows. 15 doesn't have rows. So no, it was all of the
6 and before.
Yeah, all of the OG 2D ones.
Yeah,
had rows.
The sprite based games.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of positioning, it had depth. But when you talk about SRPGs or SJRPGs, that it takes it to a whole new level. It's still turn based, but it's just an extra layer of depth. And to some people that's better. To some people it's worse. Sometimes you just don't want to play those type of games, and that's fine. But it's more depth, and that's always fun too.
Yeah. Especially not a JRPG at all, but the XCOM games.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's not like there's cover, you have percentages of your hits. I know Final Fantasy Tactics had that too. What was good, especially since that game also had like character. Like all the tactics games tend to have character variability. Like, I'm a warrior, I can do this. I'm a mage, I can do this. And then, of course, in the Final Fantasy Tactics games, you could like mix and match what your jobs were or what your skills were. So it wasn't so bad.
XCOM, to all those people out there that do like SJRPGs, definitely try and give XCOM a try, because it's a fun game, and I think you'd all like it. But to come back to the original point, is turn-based still fun, or is it outdated?
No, I think it's still fun. Then again, like I'm not really the correct person to ask. I'm old. I grew up with turn-based RPGs.
Yeah,
so
I mean, you're old. You can't say you're old, because then I feel old.
Yeah, like a lot of people now, it's like, I'm gonna play Fortnite. It's like, well, play Final Fantasy. It's like, no. Like, I'm just like they wouldn't feel the inclination to do that. Everything's got to be fast, quick paced, and RPGs are very much not that. Especially turn-based RPGs, they're very slow games.
I'm of the opinion that they're still fun, especially like coming back and playing Octopath. Like the system still works. Like, please make more games like this, and it's just, I think it's still really really fun.
Again, some games age way better than others. Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy V, those age really well. Final Fantasy 1 is super. It's the same as Dragon Warrior. those first games are super basic. They are the foundation in which the genre was built. So those games is literally, you have an attack button, you have a magic button, you have I don't even think you have defend. Like, it's just literally items, magic, attacks. That's it. And then, of course, other characters have like the steal command, but that's very rare.
Yeah, like the job specific.
And that's it. That's what the game is. Like, if you don't like playing the game the first 2 hours you're playing the game, you're probably not going to like the game at hour 30.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. So, moving on.
Yeah.
So we have Octopath, which it locks you into one character. In other words, you can't switch your main character out of your party. Once you choose your main character, you're in there for good. So do you feel that having a protagonist is necessary, or do you feel like, or do you prefer able to change protagonists around as you see fit? Because most JRPGs do give you just one character, and they'll give you people to get your side stories in. They're not most of the time. I feel like they're not super fleshed out, but then you got games like FF6 where they're really fleshed out.
At least
And,
most
and like Final Fantasy 12, everyone has their own story, and it's just you want to learn more about each character. So, do you prefer to stick to one protag, or do you like to switch out? So we'll say, like, for example, FF10 where it's strictly Titus, or FF12 where you can kind of like, it's technically Vaughn, but you can switch it around and they can be your protag if you choose so.
Question: did Final Fantasy X have any fights? Oh no, yeah, they did. Moron. I was about to ask a question I know the answer to. If they had any fights that locked you into characters, but yeah, all the swimming sections.
Yeah, I remember
Waka,
Kimahri versus the Ronso.
And the Kimahri fight is the boss fight. But for the most part, you don't really have to use, like, the story is told through Titus's eyes.
Oh, you're right.
But you don't really ever need to use Titus, like, other than the story parts where it makes it mandatory. But then again, those parts also suck because that's the worst part of the game is the Kimahri fight. Hey, you have to use this character that nobody likes. It's like, fuck.
I mean, they knew what they were doing. Like, when they put that fight in there, like, those guys do scale to your level. Because
like, they assumed that not either people would have clear favorites. Like, I have clear favorites in that game. I'm using Auron. As soon as he's in my party, I'm almost never taking him out. I love that character.
Pretty much. Auron and Titus are staples. Like, that's just how it is.
Well, for me, it's Auron, Titus, Yuna. Like, that's the team. That's my favorite team in the game. Are they the most broken team for the base game? I would say. For post game, no.
No, you got to get Waka in there.
Post game, I would say post game. It's Auron, Waka, and Riku. They're the three best for post game. Because the mix abilities broke. Waka does ridiculous amount of damage, and Auron can taunt.
Who's actually worse, Kimahri or Lulu? I think it's Kimahri, right?
Oh yeah, no, Kimahri sucks. Lulu, at least, like, she's sassy. So it's just like, hey, Lulu. Also, boobies.
Fun fact, Kimahri voiced by Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah, I know that. Wait, is it Joe or John?
I don't know. Is it Joe or John? I always thought it was Joe.
I think Joe DiMaggio is a baseball player.
No, Joe DiMaggio's the guy that does Bender. Marcus Phoenix.
I thought that was John DiMaggio.
Most famed for doing Kimahri Ronso of FFX. Well, someone will find out.
Oh, yeah, we'll Joe. All right, Joe is a baseball player. John is a voice actor.
Oh.
It's like, yeah, man, Joe DiMaggio. I'm just like, baseball man?
Are you telling me we can't get John DiMaggio as a guest on the podcast anymore?
Yeah, we can. Just you can't be in the episode. Because you're an idiot.
Okay, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
John DiMaggio. There you go. Fun fact.
Yeah, man. Joe DiMaggio played baseball. Is the voice of Bender. It's ridiculous. Anyway.
He's a talented man.
But I do feel that some games do it better than other games, obviously. My brain just turned off. Pokemon is a good example because as much as you play the human character, you never really use the human character.
Well, you lost me there.
You really only ever play as the Pokemon. Like, that's the thing. Like, you're the ringleader puppet master, but I've never really felt like, yeah, like, the human did all the work. It's like, no, like, that game's, like, it's weird. It's a weird thing because I've never really felt I'm playing the trainer. I've always really felt that I'm building a team to play as these Pokemon.
I can kind of see where you're coming from.
Yeah, so like...
So basically, they should allow you to take your own picture with the 3DS and just, put your face on there.
No, because if you play online, they wouldn't let you use the picture because people are gross.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so it's like, what's that? It's a wiener.
Are you sure?
Like, no, that is a bell end.
Definitely a wiener.
Yeah, it's just like, oh no. But using Octopath as a example, it kind of does both. It's like the best of both worlds, kind of, but not really. Because you have your character that you choose at the beginning of the game, and that's your mainstay. That's the character you have the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get all these other characters that you can cycle out of your team, but you have to keep the main character. So it's easy to attach yourself to your character, and then you're like, I really like my character with this character, or my character with this character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of the best of both worlds. Final Fantasy Tactics does this too. Final Fantasy Tactics is like, you tell the story through your eyes, and some missions have mandatory combatants, but it's few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
But you have your person on your party, and then you have to make your party of whoever you recruit. If you've never played a Final Fantasy Tactics game, or Disgaea, or Fire Emblem, but there's a lot of games bring up Final Fantasy VI because that's a really good thing. People consider Locke the main character, but as much as I like Locke as a character, I didn't really have him in my team.
Was it just because you didn't... Like, was he just not strong as a character?
No, I liked other characters better.
I gotcha.
Like, Sabin was my boy.
Of course.
Sabin, Cyan...
Shadow?
No, God, no.
What was the name of the little kid?
Sabin, Cyan... Oh, the painter. I don't remember her name because I don't use her either.
Who was the little kid?
The painter. The little girl?
The painter?
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the boy who was like a savage. It's like a jungle boy.
Gao's horrible. I never used Gao. I hated Gao, and that's because there's like strategies that are like make a Gao OP because if you fight certain creatures and you learn their abilities, he has the chance to cast like Ultima and shit like that. But it's just I hate him. I don't like him. But it was like Terra, Sabin, Cyan. And the fourth character was the one character, like, if I had to rotate, I would. But it was usually Celeste. So it was my 2 magic damage characters and my 2 damage characters. Like, just regular damage. Because I did the cheese thing with Sabin, because I played it on the SNES Classic. Which is, it's a straight-up port of the SNES version. So, like, all the glitches, all the items, all the exploits, they're still there.
Everything's exactly the same.
Yeah, so, like, the Vanish Doom bug is there, if anybody knows what I'm talking about. It's literally, you make the enemy disappear, and all your magic has a 100% chance of hitting them, including death. And it works on most bosses. I just didn't do it because it's cheesy. But
does that kind of stuff, like, ruin the game for you?
No, because you have to choose to do it.
Yeah.
If it was something like a bug where it's like, if you do this ability on this character, it soft locks your game. That sucks. But this isn't that. This is just like, hey, if you there's this dumb thing that you can do. It's like a XP exploits.
Yeah, it's there. It's an option if you so choose to use it. Yeah. But you don't have to. You're not forced into it.
I used it once or twice just on like, my party's about to get wiped in the dinosaur forest if anybody's played Final Fantasy VI. And I'm just like, Vanish Doom. and then heal my guys up, like just to avoid the game over. But that game is really like everybody has. It's kind of like Octopath, except that you're not really locked into a character.
Mm-hmm.
It's more just like in certain parts you are, because you don't have a fleshed out party. Like especially after the big mid game thing, when your party gets split up. It's an old game, but I still don't want to spoil it in case you want to play it. Or
I mean, you kind of did earlier.
Whatever. When that whole thing happens, you're locked into the characters that you get, and you have to find your other characters. So you're stuck with one character, and then that character finds one character, and then you find another, then you find another, then you find another. So for those parts of the game, you're locked into that party. But once you start unlocking characters, you're like, cool, I found who I'm going to use them. But that game's really good at telling a story and making you care about those characters. Same with Final Fantasy X. Like I as much as I hate Kimahri as a character, his story's kind of interesting, especially once you get towards the end game, where it's just like, hey, like he knew all along, plot twists at the end, like he was in on it.
I kind of want to talk about this. So spoilers, FF10 spoilers, if for whatever reason you haven't played it or finished it. And coming out. So he knew Yuno was going to die the whole time, and that's why.
Well, not even that. He knew that Auron was unsent.
Yeah, he knew Auron was unsent. He knew Yuno was going to die. He had everything in the back of his head. He had the info. So whenever people were trying to give Yuno shit, especially Titus, like Kimahri was kind of just like, "Urgh." But like, it's also kind of like annoying that nobody ever told Titus. But I get it, because they didn't want him to change the way he acted towards Yuno. They didn't want him to, his personality to change, and they wanted things to remain the same. She just, she wanted to be happy.
Yeah, she wanted Pilgrimage to be happy because she knew that she was going to have to sacrifice herself at the end.
Yeah. So basically, Kimahri isn't the absolute worst, but he's bad. No, but he's not the worst.
He's not the worst character ever created. That's Hope for RPGs. I mean,
time skip Hope is pretty cool.
Yeah, but this isn't time skip Hope. This is shit ass Hope.
All right, we're talking about base 13 Hope.
He's garbage.
Yeah, he's pretty garbage. I mean,
he's
trash.
Tyler won. We play League of Legends. Just letting you guys know. But for the whole protagonist thing, again, it all really depends on what the flavor of the month you want. Because going back to Shin Megami Tensei 4, your character really doesn't have a voice. Like, you make the decisions, and again, it changes the outcome of things. And at my point in that game, like, I feel like I'm near the end. I don't really know, because that game is weird. It's good, but it's weird. It's super Japanesey. Like, if you really want an RPG that's relatively difficult and is actually challenging, Shin Megami Tensei 4 on the 3DS is good. So,
bringing that up, I kind of want to bring up like choices and linearity in RPGs.
Yeah.
So, basically, FF13, SMT, Chrono Trigger, FF7, what have you. Do you prefer carving your own path or having it like chosen for you? ABC choices or no choices? Choices that affect the ending of the game?
It all depends. Again, we've played many an RPG. We're veteran. I don't want to say veteran, but we're seasoned RPG players.
We're definitely above average.
From Final Fantasy to Dragon Warrior, Dragon Quest to SMT, Final Fantasy Tactics, Fire Emblem,
Xenogears,
Golden Sun, the Xeno game. Like, we've played many RPGs, and it all depends on what you're into at the moment.
Yeah, so I keep saying what you prefer, but that's not fair to say, because they're all good.
Yeah. Again, it's what you want. It's a frame of mind. Because there's sometimes, like, I want to sit down, I want to play a relatively linear RPG. A final, like base Final Fantasy 1, Dragon Warrior, those games where it's just literally like, this is the area, this is the dungeon, there's a path that you go to get to the end of the dungeon, but there's rooms that you can go into, that items, encounters, weapons, so on and so forth. And that's cool because you're crawling the dungeon, you're playing the game. And there are some times where I want to load Skyrim, I want to walk into Whiterun, and I just want to murder everybody. Or I want to go in Skyrim as like, I've never been inside that cave before, I'm going to walk in there. Or I'm playing Shin Megami Tensei and I have one story mission and I got like 19 side missions. It's like, I'm going to do the side missions. Like, that's cool because it lets you have more game in the game. But there are moments, especially at key points in games, where it's like, this choice affects the rest of the game, including the ending, or it completely locks you off of a path, and that doesn't feel good, especially if you don't know what's coming and you do not have proper saves in place.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you would probably want to go, like, before playing the game, read up, like, hey, this is where the branches diverge, so make a save state here, or a save file.
Or
so
save,
when you, because it kind of sucks when a game has multiple endings, and I mean, obviously you want to see them all, right? Like, you don't want to be like, all right,
yeah,
I saw the good ending, I'm good. I don't want to see anything else. Like, I kind of want to know what happens if the neutral ending, the bad ending. And you can look them up on YouTube, but sometimes there's a lot of decisions and a lot of different ways a story goes depending on what direction you're going. So it's kind of like, ugh.
Yeah, there's some stuff that requires additional playthroughs. And for some games, that's okay. Another RPG that's not a JRPG technically is Undertale. That game has a bunch of endings, and the game knows when you're safe scumming. Like, the game is super self-aware. Like, hey, like, oh, like, I saved, I killed this guy, I'm going to reload my save and not kill this guy. And the game knows that you did that. And that character has a commentary on what you did. They're like, oh, you didn't kill me this time, that's cool. And it's just like, yeah, like, which, again, in theory is cool, but for some games, like Shin Megami Tensei or Persona, where you want the waifu and you messed up one choice. I almost said the F word. You messed up one choice and you lose the chance of that, or you drastically set yourself back. And if you're not saving properly, that can be a 2-hour time loss, a 10-hour time loss. Like,
I mean, you could especially for games 40 hours in, right? And you make the wrong choice, and you're kind of like, well, I just locked myself out of that, so that's fun.
Yeah, like that blows. That's not a good feeling. Again, we are seasoned RPG players. I mean, I've lost 12 hours of gameplay because I forgot to save. Final Fantasy 12 was the biggest time save. The biggest time loss I've ever had is Final Fantasy 12. It was 12 hours. And
I mean, it happens, right? I lost like 2 or 3 hours in Persona 5, and that killed me. That made me stop playing the game for a while. Like, it killed me.
Again, it depends. So speaking about this subject specifically, it depends on how far in the game you are. Like, end game Final Fantasy 12 hours was nothing. Where I was just like, oh man, I only really did like 5 things.
Yeah, no, like this was 2 hours. It was nothing.
Like,
but just the fact that it happened tilted me so.
If you lose
hard.
3 hours, if you lose 3 hours in the first 5 hours of the game, just restart the game. Don't even go back to the old save. Just restart. You'll do it twice as fast.
But yeah, so like the reason that I had brought this up was because I have noticed personally that a lot of people don't like linearity. They see it as a negative connotation when it comes to games, because, you know, people are trying to move away from linearity, and they're kind of, you know, they want people to make their own choices and what have you. But personally, I still like linearity, and I feel like it's a, you know, I'm not a big fan of linearity, but it has its place and it's fun. Like, I like stories being told to me as opposed to where I'm trying to branch out all the time.
Yeah, it depends on where you put your choices and where you put your linearity. If the game is 100% linear, Final Fantasy 13, if you don't like lightning, if you don't like snow, if you don't like hope, you're fucked. Just like those are characters that you have to play a majority of the game with. And if you don't like them, tough. That's tough cookies. Like that.
Yeah, just don't play the game.
Yeah, like that blow. That's what happened to me. Like I was like, I hate lightning, I hate hope, and they're a big part of the game, and you have to play them at the same time. And as much as I like Vanille and Saz, that game isn't fun to play. Like for me again. All this is connotation me. I don't like playing Final Fantasy 13.
And to like just to bring up, like if you're playing a game and you don't enjoy playing the game, let's say you're 20 hours in and you don't enjoy it. Don't force yourself to play through the game. Just drop it. It's like watching a cartoon, a series, anime, whatever, what have you. If you're watching it and at some point you just stop enjoying the show, don't force yourself to keep playing it or keep watching it because you're just wasting your time.
Yeah,
if it's that bad, just stop.
Yeah, pull the eject button.
Yeah.
I will say that that's a difficult statement for RPGs because there's some RPGs that don't get fun until like 10 hours in.
No, that's fair. That's fair. It's just, once you're like 40 hours in,
SMT.
or like, even 20 hours in, if you're just trying to push through and you don't enjoy the gameplay, you don't enjoy certain aspects of the game that are a huge factor towards your enjoyment of said game, don't force yourself to push through it because it's not worth your time.
Like there's some stuff that has never been said in the realm of RPGs. Like, I really like the combat, but I don't like any of the Pokemon. It's just like, you should stop playing the game, bro. Like, stop playing Pokemon. If you don't like any of the Pokemon in the game, but you really like the combat system, play something else. Like, Pokemon's not for you.
Yeah.
Because that's all that game is. It's
And I get it. Like, some games do, like, the story is so good that you will go through shitty combat, and that's fine. But if it's really that bad for you, just stop.
Shit, man. Fucking...
Just a tip.
Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, the music pulled me through that game. I just liked the music, and I played the whole...
I really want to talk about soundtracks for JRPGs. Like, I want to make a whole podcast just for music.
Yeah. That sounds good. Like, I'm down for that. But, again, going back to linearity and choices... again, where you put your choices and where you put your linearity. If a story is relatively linear... then let them have the choices with a character. This is, again, where Bethesda gets it correct. This is the story. This is the story that you're going to play. But you can play it however you want. It's you want to have an axe. You want to use magic. You want to beat people up with your hands. You want to paralyze people. You want to walk up to them and turn them into chickens. Like, do whatever you want. But the story is the story.
Yeah. And then there's go on.
For RPG, going back to Final Fantasy VI or even Final Fantasy IX, it's these characters do this and this is the story, but you get to choose who's in your party, especially towards the end game. Like this character, like none of the characters are mandatory in the end game. Yes, the story pulls characters out away from each other for certain other story segments. But I feel that the way that they did it is really good because they don't really stick you with a character you don't like very often. Like, if you don't like Garnet, it kind of sucks. If you don't like Steiner, something's wrong with you. But that's another thing. If you don't like Zidane...
What if you don't like Quina?
You're never forced to play as Quina. That's the thing. I don't like Quina. That's the joke. She's busted, and you can do busted stuff with her. But
there is at one point where you do have to play as Quina.
I don't know. We're talking about Quina. Amaranth blows. Like, Amaranth sucks the big wiener. Like, he's
so
not.
Let me tell you why Amaranth's actually the worst.
Now let me tell you why he's the best.
No, you can't.
He's not.
Yeah, like, I don't want to talk about Amaranth anymore.
Nobody wants to talk about Amaranth ever. He blows. Anyway, like,
so Amaranth sucks. That's a fact.
But those games give you choice in your party, but the story's linear. And I've never really seen a game where you can't choose your character, but the story is whatever you want. Oh, no. But the story is whatever it is you want it to be. Like, I don't know. Like, there's no real games that lock your character and then free the story up. I've never played a game like that.
I'm pretty sure there's some out there, and I'm pretty sure we've played one or two, but it's not coming
to mind.
My light bulbs are turning on right now.
Yeah, because again, like for certain games that aren't really linear, that don't force stuff down your throat, it can be kind of intimidating. where it's just like, play the game. Here you are. Like, not an RPG, but an open world game, Grand Theft Auto, any of them. There is so many times where I've gotten to the second island or the second area and never finished the game. Where I'm just playing the game. I'm just walking around doing nothing.
Flying on tanks.
Or doing, playing the game, technically, but I'm not advancing the story.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to, because I'm having so much fun playing the game.
Yeah, your enjoyment isn't coming from the story. It's coming from actually playing the game.
Yeah. And again, that I wouldn't really classify that. It's not a JRPG because it's not Japanese, but
no, it's just.
But again, stuff like that in that realm, where the game is so fun that you don't really want to go forward. That's where opening up the story is kind of not a great thing, because then people don't get the story that the creator of the game intended.
Yeah, are we talking about where the game opens up and you feel no pressure to continue the story, or is it kind of where you just don't want the story to end, so you're just like, I'm not going to continue?
That's a completely different thing, because I think that's not so much a problem with the game, that's a problem with the player, because I have that problem, and I hate that I have that problem. I'm level 99 in Bravely Default. I've gotten fucking Tiz has mastered every class that I can have at the moment, and I know I'm at the end of the game, and I don't beat it. Not because the game isn't good, and not because the game isn't fun, but because I don't want it to be over.
Yeah, no, it's the same way. I do the same thing, Books. I don't finish books. Or I finish some, but most of the time I don't, because I don't want the adventure to end. Because then
it's over.
After that,
it's over. Because it's over.
Where'd I go from here?
And then there's some games, of course, that have sequels. We were talking about this before we started recording. Golden Sun. That's a game that's relatively linear. You have choices with the djinns. You can swap them out and turn characters into different and min-max your stats. And that's really cool. The ending of that game is not good, of the first Golden Sun. It's rewarding and it feels cool. You're like, I did it. I beat the game. I got the credits. But it doesn't wrap the story up. There is no story wrapping up. There is no
closure.
Yeah, you don't get closure for the end of that game. Where other games, like Final Fantasy X, has great closure. Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy V, those games have definitive endings. It's like, we won the day. Happy day.
And then Square Enix comes in and says, hey,
the after use.
Final Fantasy X-2, let's go.
Oh my god, one of the worst.
You want more closure?
One of the worst.
How about a whole new game about an ending?
Yeah, one of the worst games that I've ever played that's actually a good game.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for saying that. I'm happy you added that, because that game was fun to play.
Yeah, the game is fun. The mechanics are fun. It's all fleshed out.
Spears
was not
was so good.
Again, it's the Final Fantasy 13 problem. The biggest problem with Final Fantasy X-2 is that it's a Final Fantasy game. If it had been any other RPG, if it had been a Square Enix no-name RPG, it'd have been awesome. But it was Final Fantasy.
I mean, they could have kept it as Final Fantasy. It's just
not 10.
What the story was about. They should have just scrapped it. Like, I don't like. Yeah, like it could have been a Final Fantasy, maybe like
that's like Star Wars
spin-off, or that's like anything else.
That's like Star Wars comic books. We had the movie, and they added more stuff, and some of it's cool, some of it's kind of weird,
and some of it sucks,
and some of it bites ass.
Yeah.
Like, some of it's not great. Like, and again, the game looks good. It plays well. The bosses are funny and interesting. But the story wasn't good.
Matt, well, we will have an FFX podcast where we'll talk about X and X-2, and we'll talk about why X-2 is really good and why it's probably the worst Final Fantasy ever created.
I don't know, 13.
Except Mystic Quest and Dirge of Cerberus.
You can eat my fucking... I'm not going to say anything. I dislike Dirge of Cerberus. And the game's fun, but I love Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, but I'll be the first one to tell you, I have mad nostalgia glasses for that. Like, that game, I know that game is bad.
So let's move on. let's talk about grinding and post game content. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
how do you feel about grinding? Like, is grinding a turnoff? Do we want to grind in order to progress the story, or with the side stories and the quests that are being provided to you, side quests, excuse me, where they level you up with the story, so you're pretty much at the recommended level for the most part, or like FF8 where the game levels with you. Like, there's just so many different types of leveling systems, which some want you to grind and some cap you at grinding, like FF13. So, like, how important is grinding? Is grinding a turnoff? Are you fine with it?
You know this because
I know this,
we're
but
friends,
let's tell the people.
I'm a grind lord. I like the grind. I like to, at the end of a game, feel strong.
This is another reason why you don't like 13, right?
Yeah, it's where they cap you out. But the thing is, like, once they cap you out, you're relatively strong. Like, the fights aren't difficult.
Yeah, it's like the recommended. They don't want you to go above it then
because
it'd be too easy.
Because they want you to feel that the characters are struggling and playing the game. And
yeah, but you like the power feeling, right? Where like
I
I'm
like
big
being
shit.
strong, and I like it when the game inhibits you in certain areas where experience, like, I think I think Pokemon Sun does this now, where experience is relative to the level difference. Where if you're closer in levels, you gain less experience, but if the gap is bigger, you gain more experience, depending on what side of the spectrum you're on. So if I'm going up against a level 50 and I'm a level 2, let's say I gain 7,000 experience. But if I'm a level 45 versus a level 50, I only gain like 800, 900 experience.
Yeah, so
their level
it's definitely scaling.
Yeah, their level didn't change. My level changed, and that's fine. I don't like
the algorithm is definitely changing.
Yeah, I don't like Final Fantasy VIII where they level up with you.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either.
Because it kind of incentivizes you to not play the game.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh, I'm going to fight this encounter. No, because I'm going to mess up my levels for the boss.
Yeah, you're rewarded for not leveling.
Yeah, or it's just
which is kind of weird, especially in a JRPG where it's kind of like I kind of want to play the game.
Yeah, but that game, it's grindy and not grindy at the same time. They don't want you to grind experience; they want you to grind magic, and that's weird.
You definitely have different options in how you want to play the game.
Yeah, like I'm gonna draw
some better than others, but I mean,
especially
there's
like early in that game, in one of the first encounters, like once you get Renoa, they kind of set you up for the grind because every encounter, every mob has fire, thunder, and blizzard. Yeah, fire, thunder, blizzard, and cure. Every encounter that you'll fight, you encounter those spells. So you can just sit there and kill the enemies. But then you're messing up your experience counter, and then when you get to disc 3, everything's at level 80, you're at level 80, but everything's just as strong as you, so the game gets harder. And of course, every Final Fantasy has their cheese, but like...
Triple Triad, and I hate the junction system.
It doesn't feel good. Like, that doesn't feel good. Where it's just like, oh man... Where it feels, if you didn't XP scum the beginning of the game, that it just punishes you for getting that strong. And that's not super fun. Because it literally feels like a struggle the whole way. And to some people that might be fun, like, again, not an RPG, an American, or not a JRPG, but something like Dark Souls. That game, you can say that it's a trudge the whole way through the game, but it's 3D. It has a learning curve. Like, you can learn a boss's patterns.
Yes, exactly. There's evolution there.
Yeah,
you adapt.
And Final Fantasy VIII or other games that don't scale properly don't have that. Where it's literally just...
You get one shot.
Yeah, everything's just as strong as you. It's just
you go in there, you get one or two shot. You play Dark Souls, you can go in there naked with a stick, as long as you know the fight, you can succeed.
And with playing Final Fantasy VIII, I know we're talking a lot about this, but grinding, like it's because if you don't know what the grind is, it's literally encounter, beat encounter, get experience, get stronger, and you keep doing that until you are big strong boy. and then you progress. Final Fantasy VIII punishes you for it. Final Fantasy 13 caps you, which is okay because there's like this is the it's the developer being, this is the struggle that we want you to have at this point in the game.
Yeah, we do not want you stronger than this, and it's not like fighting doesn't net you anything. You're still getting the
item,
CP
for later,
for the next cap,
for other characters. Because again, I was a grind lord when I played the game, and when I got to the water, where you could change the weather.
Yeah, I think it was the Sunlit Waterscape where you're playing as Saz and Vanille.
Yeah, I did that until Saz and Vanille's gauge was full.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kept doing it because I'm a cuck. And I got to the end. I beat the boss. And when I entered the next area, which I think is Palamporum with lightning
with Hope and lightning, yeah,
they maxed out their CP gauge before I even started that chapter. So I'm like, oh cool, I'm as strong as I'm gonna get.
Big old strong boy.
So it felt counterintuitive to me because I like the grind.
Mm-hmm. And
some games is more fun to grind than others. Bravely Default gives you the speed up.
The times for speed, and that's why like the games on PC on Steam, they're fun to play because you get speed ups, and you know you're moving at ×4, ×8 speed, and it makes the grind so much easier. Like me personally, I like going to the bosses under leveled because I do like the struggle. I like having to use items, having to be a bit more strategic about the fight as opposed to steamrolling them. And just to go back real quick to FF8, the best part of FF8 is probably the music.
Music and the boss fights.
And how satisfying it is to get your crit with your gunblade. Yeah. When you time it correctly. And Renzo Kuken is such a sick ass limit break. But the music for FF8 IMO is probably like the best of all the Final Fantasies.
Omnislash. Get wrecked, nerd.
Bro, come on. Omnislash is not cooler than Renzo Kuken.
I don't need you spreading this heresy.
Oh my god. We're
anyway,
like,
well,
we're moving on.
Well, not really moving on, but again, post game content. I like post game content for certain games. I don't believe Final Fantasy X needed post game content.
But is post game content like is it important to you? Like, do you feel that a game needs it? Like, should it belong or not? And do we feel like it adds depth to the game? Or
again,
like, should it contribute to the story? Should it add lore, mystery, or should they just add it for a higher challenge, for a bigger challenge?
I don't think so. I don't think it should add to the story because by the name of it, it's post game content. You already beat the game. You've already completed the story. And then if you want to keep playing the game, that's good. And God of War did that. You want to know more about the world? You already got to the end of the game. You feel beefy. Here's a challenge. And that's okay. That's fine. For people who are
it's kind of like Gen 4 Pokemon. Or was it Gen 5? The one where they added the Battle Tower with like... They probably had the best post-game... I think it was 5, right? Gen 5? I think it was Black and White 2, which probably had the best post-game content of any Pokemon game. That shit was ridiculous.
7 is good too, with where you have to defend your title against the Kahunas. Mm-hmm. Because those fights are hard.
And I've always liked post-game content, especially when it adds lore. When you get more lore to the world, I love it.
Think
that's what I like.
Lore to the world, not the story. Because I don't want to complete a story and then be one of those people that are like, wipe your hands of it, I'm done. I have finished the story.
Like, and you got a full experience, right?
And then someone tells you, like, oh, if you don't do the endgame content, you don't understand that the last boss's dad was a dickhead and that's why he was that way. And I'm just like, I don't need any of that. Like, I don't.
The last boss is actually red. Did you know? Like, oh,
that's different. Because I wouldn't say that the end of the Elite Four. I think that red is the end of the game. The red fight is the bow on top of that present. Like, I did it. I'm done. I'm a Pokemon master. Red can suck a dick.
I'm the Pokemon master.
Like, I am the best. But again, games like bringing back Final Fantasy X, I beat the game and now I can do all this other stuff, and that's fine. I like that.
Especially the international version with like all the Dark Aeons and what have you.
The Dark Aeons, the monster arena fights where you have to fight like the ultimate version of the monster. Basically,
Waka the game.
Yeah, whereas like if you don't have maxed out Waka, that shit's not gonna be fun. Or a game like like the OG Final Fantasy. That game didn't have any post-game content. They added post-game content in the Game Boy Advanced releases,
in the re-releases.
Yeah, the dungeons, the elemental dungeons. And those dungeons are fun. Like I played them all, got to the 50th floor on all of them. And that was cool. And that's cool. That's really fine. Those are homages to like the later Final Fantasies. You fight the Phantom Train, you fight the Death Gaze, you fight Omega, like a lot of really cool encounters. But I did that because I was young and I didn't get games very often. So that was just like, I have this game, I'm gonna play this game.
Yeah, I'm gonna milk it for everything that it has. I can.
And then there's games like hidden encounters that don't really mean a lot. Not Final Fantasy. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars has that, where you can fight the Final Fantasy boss from the first game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a mandatory encounter, but you can do it. And that's cool. And that's really dope. That's super cool, and I like that. It doesn't really add anything, but it is like more game. And everybody should like more game as long as the more game isn't mandatory or tedious.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to do the post-game content in order to feel a closure or anything like that. It should be something that that could provide lore, something that's not absolutely necessary, but it gives you more insight towards the world or why the story went the way that it went. It's just add stuff that's a bonus.
Yeah, there's a YouTube channel that I watch called The Completionist. That one video gamer, Gerard, and that channel gives me insight for certain RPGs where it's like, you beat the game, you get a different end game screen if you complete the game. And I'm just like, that doesn't feel like that's worth. Like, you play the game for 40 hours, completed the game, play the game for 100 hours, and you get a different end game screen. I'm just like, no. Like, that doesn't make sense. But they can't make the game 100 hours to just get the full end game experience because no one will play the game unless you're a dedicated RPG player. And the way that they supplement that sometimes is with multiple endings. And some people, I don't know if some people consider that post-game content because it's really just game content that you're consuming again. Just in a different way.
I can see why people would consider it post-game content because it's something that you're going to play after you have finished your initial playthrough. But it technically isn't post-game content.
Yeah. It's just like, I'm doing the game again to get a different ending.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to do it. You have to.
And then
you just got to know.
There's shit like New Game Plus that I know Shin Megami Tensei 4 does it, where beat the game, get your New Game Plus, the game is harder, you keep some of your stuff, I think. I don't really know.
Then you got games like Nier also where you have to pass it 5 times and you get like different endings. And I know you side to it, but it's actually really
I never played the game. Like, I scoff at the sound of like, oh my god, 5 endings, but I'm putting it in class with other RPGs.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, and you play as different characters, not for all of them, but like you play as 3 different characters.
And also like Nier Automata, like it's a lot of like, now we're going to be a beat 'em up. Now we're going to be a shooter. Now we're going to be a bullet hell. Now we're going to be
it's so cool.
The game constantly evolves, and that's cool. But again, like I was saying, Shin Megami Tensei 4, New Game Plus has New Game Plus missions that you can't get in the original game in your first playthrough.
Yeah, but I mean, it's something that contributes heavily to the story, right? It's just like more content for you to enjoy.
Yeah, it's more like harder missions with slightly altered mobs that you can get one special ability from, or now this one boss is a regular mob that you can capture, so you can have a boss character in your team. And
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure you can get like new demons or devils.
Like, I don't like. it makes no difference to me because I played that game initially for the story, and then I was just playing it because story's cool. I want dope demons. Like I want like really cool abilities and such.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I mean it's cool nonetheless because some people do like to play multiple playthroughs to the same game for whatever reason, but you know it gives you an incentive to do it, and it's I can see why it's fun. I'm not a big fan of like, you know, New Game Plus in games myself, but I mean the fact that the option's there is always a good thing.
I think the only game that I'd be super into it in would be Dark Souls. It's just like you keep all your stuff and you get to play the game again, but they're harder. I'd be like, okay, like
yeah, I think like the Persona games are like that too, where it gets harder, but you know you keep all your spells, you keep all your personas and what have you.
Yeah,
but,
and like,
yeah, I mean.
That again, it depends like player to player and also like person to person. Player to player is person to person, and I'm a dummy. But what you're into, what you want out of the game, also your financial status. Because if I was a 10-year-old kid and I had Shin Megami Tensei 4 and like this is your game for the year, I'm gonna milk that game for all it has.
Oh, see me a New Game Plus like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm milking it.
Yeah. But
I mean,
like, as an,
you know,
like that's why any person you've ever met that played the Mega Man games as a kid, they know those games
like 25 times.
They know those games inside and out because it's just like this is the game that I have. Not to mention
this is the game that I had. I was playing nothing else.
Not to mention that this game is dope and it's super fun to play. And it's the only game I have. You damn sure I'm gonna play the game over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. So I don't know. This has been going on for I don't know, well over an hour. Like, do you think we should call it now? I mean,
we're like an hour 32.
Yeah. Do we have anything else we want to contribute or talk about, or are we done?
Just that if you're listening to this and you're not,
and you got this far,
and you're not an RPG player, and you want to, you know, play an RPG that's beginner friendly. It's difficult now. If you're gonna pick up a new RPG to play currently, you might have to go backwards.
I don't know. I think it depends. It depends on what console do you have? Do you have a Switch? Do you have a PS4? Do you have an Xbox? Do you have a computer that can actually play, you know, games?
Yeah, a handheld, because I know that like handhelds are really big RPG fodder.
Yeah, like if you have a Switch, I would recommend Octopath Traveler. It's a really fun game. Xenoblade Chronicles 2. That you would have to look up because it's different, but yeah. I would recommend Octopath for the Switch, and for PS4, you know, you have Persona 5, which is an amazing game.
Xbox
I have no experience with Xbox.
Xbox doesn't really have a lot of JRPGs. I mean, Final Fantasy 15, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
Final Fantasy 15 is a really good beat 'em up. Story gets kind of funky, I've been told. If you have a 3DS or any Nintendo game or like handheld, the Pokemon games are really intro friendly, and if you want to deep dive, you can deep dive EVs, IVs, type advantages, hidden abilities.
Yeah, you really want to get competitive about it.
If you want to like collectathons, there's shinies and all kinds of stuff that you can do. And also
there's also the Fire Emblem games too.
Yeah, Fire Emblem's really good if you want to do tactics games. If you're an old RPG player and you have a 3DS and you haven't really found the RPG that's really gonna like pressure you, like actually be a difficult game, the Shin Megami Tensei 4 games are really good. They don't hold your hand. They're relatively difficult. There's a lot of figuring stuff out for your own. You know, like those games are really difficult, not really intro level RPGs. If you're a little kid, the Super Mario or Mario and Luigi games are super fun.
Oh, the Superstar Saga, if you can get that, I highly recommend it. That game is really good.
I have Mario and Luigi Dream Team. I got it for the 30th anniversary of Luigi. It was the year of Luigi.
Is that the sequel to Superstar Saga?
It's one of the sequels. There's a bunch.
Okay.
It's like, but that one, what's it called? Dream Team, Mario and Luigi Dream Team. That's a super fun one. If you have an SNES Classic, there's a bunch of super good RPGs on it. If you
got FF6 or FF3, whatever you want to call it.
Final Fantasy 6. You always call them by the Japanese iterations. It just saves so much confusion.
Yep.
It's a rule of thumb. Again, elitist Final Fantasy player.
Yeah, well, you got Earthbound in there.
Yeah,
and you got Secret of Mana. Secret of Mana is kind of it didn't age that good.
Nostalgia helps that one, but again, Earthbound's still a great game. Again, not a very intro level RPG. That RPG is a little difficult.
If you have a PSP, the Star Ocean games. Oh my god, that's really fun.
If you have a Vita, the PS1 games galore. All those games are RPGs and they're all really fun.
Yeah, you can get you can get 7, 8, and 9 of Final Fantasy.
7, 8, 9. Suikoden 2.
I think Xenogears is on there too.
Yeah, they have so many.
They might have Grandia. I think they might have Grandia 3.
Yeah, a bunch of RPGs, guys. If you want,
nonetheless, guys, there's a lot of games out there to play. Give them a try if you haven't.
It's one of the oldest genres of video games, and
give it a shot.
You're bound to find one that you like. If you look in the correct places. I didn't bring up Dragon Warrior at the end. That's another franchise that really aged well. It's like I haven't really come across a bad one since 7. Like there's some that aren't as good as others, but none of them are like diarrhea.
And you know what? Dragon Quest 11, which is the most recent iteration of Dragon Quest, is coming to NA. It's coming to PC. It's coming to Switch, PS4. I'm not sure if it's coming to Xbox. I hope it is.
You get it on your iPhone. It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be great. You guys, if you haven't played JRPGs, give them a shot. If you don't like, I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this, you like JRPGs. So we're probably preaching to the choir, but nonetheless, tell your friends.
All right, guys. That's gonna be it for the Get the Shade podcast. It has been a pleasure. Remember that I am your host, Ray.
I'm your other host, Richo. I love you guys if you're listening, but y'all take it easy, all right?
Take it easy, my dude.